Welcome to episode 2 of Shape Explorations in Artisan Ropework. So this week I'm exploring the cone shape and how you can utilise the cone to create different pieces of work. So a few years ago I was experimenting with jute as well as cotton rope together, and I made a series of panniers. So they were 2 baskets together, and on some of them I made special handles too. But what I found with the jute is that it was difficult to create structurally enough tension to between sort of the bridge between the two. So they were a really fun experiment that I did, and I want to explore this further and see what new pieces I can create. So I've gone back to the drawing board a little bit with this one. And what I'm looking to do is to do a similar shape, but that's a little bit more structurally sound. Okay, so whilst I was making this first series of panniers, I actually made a basket that I didn't finish. So this was the cone shape that I created, and you can see it's got the jute section at the top. So I wanted to replicate this shape, but maybe even try and get the bottom a little bit more pointy. So what I've done is I've worked solely with cotton rope this time, and I created this cone. So this one is slightly pointier, and it goes up to a similar level, and I've done some extra texture on the way up to add a bit of interest. And then what I've done is, as with the jute piece, so I created a flatter bottom basket which should act as a support when the two are attached together. So what I've done is, as I've said, the jute was a little bit unstable compared with the cotton cone. So I've made the basket this time with the cotton rope. So what I've done is I've made a basket that is the same height but much wider on the base to basically create that support. So when the two baskets are together, they stand up really nicely. So so I made one cone and one basket, and then I needed to attach the two together. So attaching the two together is something that I still haven't done that many times, so it's a bit hard to explain, but essentially I've created like a mini handle and then stitched the two together. And I just had to be a little bit careful that I had the right distance between the two pieces, so that there would be a distinct gap, but that they would be supporting, well, this one would be supporting the cone. So I just had to make sure that I spent a bit of time making sure that I was happy with the distance between those two pieces. So that is the finished piece of this first new style of pannier that I'm working on, and so you can see that it looks quite different from each side because I've put different textural elements in there, but I'm really happy with how it's turned out. Structurally it's very sound, it doesn't feel like it's going to tip, whereas the original jute version was a lot less stable than this, so I'm really pleased with that. So what else can we do with cones? So the cone is a really difficult shape to master in rope work, and the reason for this is because you have to start off very small with the spiral and then building that on the machine quite quickly. And the reason that that's difficult is not necessarily the technique involved, but because this physically depends on your sewing machine. So if you have a standard, sort of domestic sewing machine, a quilting machine, just regular sewing machine, what you'll probably have is a machine that has quite a large block section around the mechanism, and this will actually prevent you from being able to do this very quickly, to flip from the flat to the angle. Whereas if you have a post sewing machine, which is literally just the mechanism of the stitching, you can just basically make any shapes you like, so it'll be really easy to create a cone. So the difficulty actually lies more in what kind of machinery you have, rather than the physical technique of getting the spiral to go up quickly. So once you've mastered the cone shape, there are loads of different things that you could create with that. So one of the very classic things to make is a hanging basket. So there's lots of different ways that you can create a hanging section at the top. I have always done it this way, where I've created like little gaps in the work near the top to create those elements. You could also do loops at the top. You can physically stitch loops as you're finishing the work. There's hundreds of different ways that you could choose to finish a hanging basket. But the reason why cone is such a nice shape for a hanging basket is because obviously a cone is quite difficult to have just freestanding, and structurally it's more likely to tip over than a flat bottomed basket. So it really lends itself to pieces that will be hanging, and they look really nice when they're grouped together in different sizes. They can be really, really effective, and obviously there's loads of different ways that you can create interest on those. So that's one of my favourite ways to use the cone shape. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Shape Explorations, and I'll see you next time to explore another shape.